A powerful missile strike on Crimea. Heavy losses. An emergency meeting in Moscow. Russia is preparing a special operation to seize Kherson. Putin and Trump will meet in the coming days. Could the war really end as soon as this summer? A website has been launched in Russia where you can choose a stolen Ukrainian child. An apocalypse in Kamchatka. Why is Putin silent? A new phase of the war. A railway war between Russia and Ukraine. Who will win? Hello, my name is Anastasia Dimitrovskaya. Right now, the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. Summer is slowly coming to an end, but it's still just as hot in Russia. Last night, Ukrainian drones carried out a successful raid on enemy territory. Volgograd region, Krasnodar Krai, and Kuban were targeted. The drones struck a military base, an oil refinery, and railway infrastructure.
Located near the military base. Something started puffing and then...
In Russia, they say that 82 drones attacked them last night, and of course, they shot them all down. Yeah, right, we can see that.
There are passengers. 2 buildings. She apparently turned on the signal. Look, she turned on the green. And the passage. Let's get out of here. I don't need it. There, see, he's pulling. Go, just leave already. There's going to be a malfunction now. It's scattered. They could crash.
Russia's leaky air defense is letting more and more through. There are strikes on military and strategic targets in different regions. Things are heating up in Crimea too. There, due to the drone threat, the Crimean bridge was closed, and there are already more than 2,000 cars in line. But it's not just drones. A ballistic missile threat has also been declared for the occupied peninsula. There are reports about naval drones.
I wouldn't want to. Wherever we go, there are shellings everywhere. Look. Yeah. What's over there behind the hill? There's probably some kind of base there. Yeah, that's the air defense. Their positions got hit.
Well, we're waiting for details and hoping for good news. And while Trump still harbors illusions that he can make a deal with Putin, Russia not only keeps pressing along the entire front, but is also planning new offensives. CNN reports that Russia is dreaming of retaking Kherson and will soon step up its efforts in that direction, specifically aiming to get onto the right bank of Kherson.
The capture of Kherson and the region, which were seized in the first days of the war and then liberated thanks to a swift Ukrainian counteroffensive in November 2022, remains one of Russian President Vladimir Putin's main objectives in this conflict. And the renewed pressure to separate the Korabelny district from the rest of the city has raised concerns that Russian forces may attempt to bomb and then land on the flat terrain in the coming weeks.
And by the way, about the city. We don't know for sure if this is the one CNN is talking about, but the Russians have been striking the same bridge in Kherson for the 5th day in a row and attacking with cabs. Our military has not commented on the occupiers' intentions so far because I think there's nothing to comment on. After all, the Russians are advancing very slowly, taking several months to capture a single small village. And the armed forces of Ukraine are holding the front securely. And you know, Trump's intention to still make a deal with Putin doesn't surprise me. And I'm not even talking about the fact that the bunker dweller is leading the US president by the nose, which in fact Trump himself sometimes admits.
I am truly disappointed by this outcome.
But what disappoints me is that the White House officially considers Russia a serious threat to the United States. This is stated in the decree that Trump signed following the negotiations between his envoy, Witkoff, and Putin.
The actions and policies of the government of the Russian Federation continue to pose an extraordinary and exceptional threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States.
I wonder how this will affect Trump's decision once the ultimatum deadline given to Putin expires. As you know, yesterday in Russia, Putin held talks with Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff. They talked for 3 hours. What exactly they discussed is unknown, and they say that even Trump himself doesn't know the exact content of the conversation. But one way or another, the conversation did take place. And in the Kremlin, of course, they say that everything was very productive and constructive. But Mr. Trump is not as impressed with the results of the talks.
I wouldn't really call it a major breakthrough, not at all.
Although both he and, of course, we acknowledge that this meeting did yield some kind of result, however modest. Because now there is talk of bilateral negotiations between Trump and Putin. Of course, Russia presents it as if Trump himself was the initiator of the meeting with Putin, but that's not quite how it happened.
The proposal for a meeting between Trump and Putin actually came from the head of the Kremlin, the White House.
Nevertheless, the topic of this meeting is developing very actively, and it is said that Trump does not want to put this off for long and plans to meet with Putin as early as next week. This is reported by the New York Times. According to two sources familiar with the plan, President Trump intends to personally meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin next week. And soon after that, he plans to hold a meeting between himself, Mr. Putin, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. However, American media have not reached a consensus, as they are also talking about a meeting in the coming weeks and a meeting at some unspecified point in the future. Well, we suggest meeting in The Hague and then going straight to the tribunal. Trump himself is talking about a meeting with Putin and Zelensky.
There is a chance that a meeting of the leaders will take place soon and we will complete this long journey.
And that sounds much more like the truth. CNN reports that Trump even gave the order at the White House to immediately begin preparations for the trilateral meeting. By the way, after the talks between Putin and Witkoff, Trump spoke with the president of Ukraine. And afterwards, Zelensky stated that it seems the Kremlin is ready to end the war.
It looks like Russia is now more inclined toward a ceasefire. The pressure on them is working. But the main thing is that they don't deceive either us or the United States in the details.
I have only one question. On August 8th, the deadline Trump gave Putin to end the war expires. I wonder, are the sanctions being postponed again? Because to me, this really looks like they're just buying time. What about you? Do you believe we're finally on the path to ending the war? Share your thoughts in the comments. And continuing on this topic, the Kremlin is already saying that the meeting between Putin and Trump will take place as early as next week, and Putin has even suggested a location for the meeting to Trump.
Could you clarify? He said it will be next week, most likely. Where? At least give us a hint about the place.
We are fortunate to have many dedicated and supportive friends who are readily available and eager to help us organize an event of this significant kind. Indeed, one of our most prominent and influential friends is the esteemed President of the United Arab Emirates, a truly remarkable individual. I think we'll decide, but that would be one of the suitable, quite appropriate places.
Russian media are also reporting that Putin stated he has absolutely nothing against holding a meeting with Zelensky. Zelensky, for his part, said that several formats for meetings are currently being discussed in order to achieve peace. According to the guarantor, there are two formats, bilateral and one trilateral. Ukraine is not afraid of meetings and expects the same bold approach from the Russian side. It's time to end the war, he said, following talks with German Chancellor Merz. Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, in turn, stated that the US made a proposal which the Russian side considers acceptable.
The proposal from the Americans seems quite acceptable to us indeed.
And of all the possibilities, where will the meeting take place?
Well, I can't say yet, although it has basically been decided.
A matter of days. Does that mean as soon as next week? You said days, not weeks.
Tentatively, yes, next week. Now we'll get to work. Where will we meet? I just said.
And Rubeus said that now there is something to discuss. So, have you found the signals?
Rubeus is right.
And in fact, about the proposal itself. The Polish portal Onet claims it has obtained the contents of the proposal voiced by Special Envoy Witkoff at the last meeting with Putin. And here is what it entails. Ukraine and Russia will not sign a peace agreement, but rather a truce, which would effectively recognize Russia's territorial gains by postponing the issue for 49 or 99 years. The lifting of most sanctions imposed on Russia, but in the long term, a return to importing Russian gas and oil. No guarantees of NATO non-expansion, but also no promise to halt military support for Ukraine. And what do you think? Will this proposal from Trump to Putin become the subject of their conversation at the meeting they want to hold next week? Putin has been told that Ukrainian defenses could collapse in 2 or 3 months. Is that true? Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces have managed to stabilize the situation in the Sumy region, and the so-called railway war is gaining momentum between Russia and Ukraine. Everything happening on and around the front lines is covered in our next report.
While the world holds its breath in anticipation of a diplomatic breakthrough, the Kremlin is betting not on negotiations, but on continuing the bloodshed. The Russian dictator Putin is not planning to make any concessions to either Washington or Kiev, even under the threat of new sanctions. He believes in a swift victory and is doing everything he can to prolong the war. The illusion of an imminent triumph is also fueled by the fairy tales the Russian general staff feeds to the man in the bunker. Another prediction claims that the Ukrainian front will supposedly collapse within 2 or 3 months. In Moscow, they now believe that retreat is not an option. They say that neither the army nor society would understand such a move.
According to 3 sources familiar with discussions in the Kremlin, Putin's determination to keep going is driven by his belief in Russia's victory and his skepticism that the latest US sanctions will have any significant impact after successive waves of economic sanctions over 3.5 years of war. The Russian leader does not want to undermine Trump and understands that he may be missing a chance to improve relations with Washington and the West. But his military objectives are more important, 2 sources said, according to Reuters.
Putin is not only unafraid of sanctions, he simply no longer believes in them. 3.5 years of restrictions have still not broken the Russian economy, which means in his eyes, the West has nothing fundamentally new to offer. In his dreams, the old man still wants to fully capture the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, and supposedly only then talk about a peace agreement.
But the front will not fall. There may be setbacks, there may be losses of individual settlements, but the front definitely will not collapse. What is happening now on the front lines certainly gives more confidence and inspiration. To the Russian command, is it a case of combat operations are going successfully? Well, partially. Is Ukraine retreating? Yes, definitely. Does the Russian Federation have successes? Of course, without a doubt. Should they stop? No, why? So what's the logic here? To continue the offensive for exactly as long as A, the situation at the front allows, how many people, equipment and support there are, and how much support and equipment the people lack. So that's one point. And the second is as long as the economy allows. That is, the Russian Federation's economy really is creaking and cracking. There are layoffs, there are cutbacks, there is budget redistribution. So, until these 2 curves meet at a single point, a shortage of people, equipment, gear, ammunition, and the economic situation at the front, until all of that comes together into one big pile, the Russian Federation will keep advancing further. Yes, gnawing off 100 or 200 meters a day, but that's the logic.
While the bunker dweller thinks everything is going according to plan, Ukrainian saboteurs infiltrated enemy airfield territory and planted explosives on a Mi-8.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Looks like someone is in for a fiery flight. Meanwhile, on the front line, Russia is advancing slowly with waves of meat grinder assaults and colossal losses. The main offensive is currently in the Donetsk direction, particularly targeting the city of Pokrovsk, a strategically important logistics hub. And although capturing the city of Rodinsky and the surrounding villages may increase pressure on the Ukrainian defense, it cannot be called a full breakthrough.
The occupiers are trying to organize an operational encirclement of Ukrainian defense forces by flanking maneuvers near Mirnohrad and, accordingly, on the other flank, near Novoekonomikne. At one point, the occupying forces managed to drive a wedge into the positions of the Ukrainian defense forces along the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway near the Malinivska interchange. Subsequently, the Russians expanded their area of presence and are advancing toward Mirnohrad. The main objective of the Russian occupation forces is to establish control over the logistics of the Ukrainian defense forces, specifically the only road by which the Ukrainian defense forces rotate personnel, evacuate the wounded, and deliver ammunition. This is the road near the settlement of Rodinsky.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian fighters from the Star 4 unit of the 14th Operational Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine are striking the enemy at the mine east of Rodinsky. Interestingly, according to the 7th Corps of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces, Russia has set the goal of reaching the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk by September 1st. Ambitious. From drones, the occupiers are dropping leaflets urging local residents to surrender the positions of the defense forces. Apparently, aside from manipulating and intimidating the locals, the invaders no longer know how to move forward. As for the Sumy direction, there the defense forces managed to stabilize the situation thanks to a series of counterattacks and to seize the tactical initiative. Right now, what's gaining momentum there is the so-called railway war.
What did Ukraine decide to do? Ukraine decided to target logistics, specifically the railways, because hitting military targets is much harder since they're all protected. It's difficult to reach them. The coefficient keeps fluctuating. I mean, the coefficient of successful hits. But the railway is long, with numerous different junctions, components, and hubs, and you can't cover all of them with air defense. So Ukraine is trying to influence not only Russian military logistics this way, but also civilian logistics. They are hitting all sorts of distribution cabinets and traction substations. In other words, everything that regulates train movement. We know that if a train stops, there will be a second, third, fourth, and fifth train behind it. And it's not just, a diesel locomotive, right? But behind it, there could be 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60 freight cars, and they can be stuck there for several hours or even several days. And in this way, movement by this mode of transport becomes paralyzed and blocked.
The Kremlin has trapped itself. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russia has deliberately created a wartime society through repression, propaganda, and making the economy dependent on the defense industry. Any pause now is not just a sign of political weakness, it's a blow to internal stability.
Russian state independent polls conducted at the beginning of 2025 showed that the majority of Russians support continuing the war in Ukraine. And the Kremlin is likely using these sentiments, which it actively stirs up, to justify Putin's decision to continue the war. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War.
In the 4 years since the large-scale invasion, the Russian occupying army's advantage, the Russian Federation's means of destruction, lies in its overwhelming superiority in the air and in manpower. And as we can see, not even the intermediate stages of the special military operation have been achieved. Moreover, in certain areas, Ukraine's defense forces have seized the tactical initiative. This refers to the successful actions of Ukraine's defense forces in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions, which have undermined the political statements of the Russian dictator about creating a so-called buffer zone and, accordingly, the plans of the general staff of the occupying country's army to expand it at this moment.
Of the theater of military operations at the expense of other regions of Ukraine that were not included in the Russian Federation by the decree of the Russian dictator dated September 30th, 2022.
While the West searches for leverage and the White House sends special envoys for negotiations, Putin is betting on a protracted war. But there is one variable in this scenario: time. And contrary to the Kremlin's confidence, time is not on Russia's side, because every month of war depletes not only Ukraine, but also the resources of the empire itself. Its collapse may be closer than it seems from the bunker. The former head of the pre-trial detention center in Taganrog personally ordered the torture of Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshyna.
During the tenure of the suspect as head of detention center number 2 in the city of Taganrog, Rostov region, a system of repressive treatment was established against illegally detained Ukrainian citizens, particularly civilians. Among the victims is the well-known Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshyna, who was detained by Russian military forces in the temporarily occupied territory of the Zaporizhzhia region and transferred to this detention center.
Victoria Roshyna disappeared on August 3, 2023 in Russian-occupied territory from where she was reporting. It was only in May 2024 that Russia first acknowledged that it had detained Roshyna. And already in October 2024, Victoria Roshyna died in Russian captivity. It is known that after being transferred to the detention center, the journalist was systematically tortured, subjected to physical violence, humiliated, psychologically pressured, and deprived of basic needs: food, water, sleep, daytime rest, and medical care. Victoria's body was returned to Ukraine only in April 2025. On August 8th, a farewell ceremony for Victoria Roshyna will be held at St. Michael's Cathedral and Independence Square in Kiev. We've long since learned that the Russians are cynical bastards. But it seems the Kremlin has outdone itself this time. Because the occupiers not only abduct Ukrainian children from the occupied territories, but also give these children away to anyone who wants them, like merchandise. In Russia, they have launched a website for selecting Ukrainian children. There is an online catalog where you can choose a child by photo, description, eye color, and hair color. On this hastily created website, you can literally pick a child for yourself by photo, with their faces fully visible. They describe the children as if they were products, obedient, calm, and so on. Just imagine, you can filter the children not only by gender, but also by eye and hair color. The founder of Save Ukraine, Mykola Kuleba, believes that such catalogs are hardly any different from a slave catalog, and what Russia is doing is simply child trafficking. Most of the children in this catalog were born before the occupation of Luhansk region and held Ukrainian citizenship. The parents of some of them were killed by the occupying authorities, and others were simply given Russian documents to legalize their abduction. And the words about trafficking and slavery are not just loud statements. Russia's crimes against Ukrainian children are recognized abroad as well. The Times writes that we are dealing with the greatest abduction of children since World War II. As the publication notes, around 35,000 children have been illegally taken from the temporarily occupied Ukrainian regions, according to various estimates. In at least 116 facilities, from Crimea to Russia's Pacific coast, Ukrainian children are being held in what are essentially re-education camps. Children who cannot be placed with families are being taught to fight, and cases of mobilizing abducted stolen children have already been documented. The natural disaster in Kamchatka once again demonstrated the kind of chaos happening in the Russian Federation. Well, first of all, Zarev has drunk himself senseless. He's blaming Budanov for the volcanic eruptions in Kamchatka. And secondly, the Central Election Commission has included the Kamchatka territory in the list of regions where, in the upcoming September elections, voting can take place not only at polling stations, but also in courtyards and public areas. And as for Putin, he remains completely silent about this Russian region. All the details are known by our journalists.
Not long ago, an earthquake with a magnitude of 8.8 struck Kamchatka, the most powerful in Russia in the past 70 years. People ran out of their homes, the asphalt rippled like waves, buildings cracked, store shelves collapsed right onto people's heads, and locals in a panic awaited a tsunami. But then the volcano erupted. Krasheninnikov, which hadn't erupted in 6 centuries, suddenly decided it was time to join the show. And now attention, amidst all this apocalypse, the authorities suddenly remembered that elections are coming up in September. And not just any election, but the re-election of the governor. And you know what? The Federal Election Commission gave permission. Elections can be held even if the polling stations are destroyed, even if it's on tree stumps. The main thing is that the ballots are laid out neatly. Everything is fair, everything is by the law. Kamchatka has endured, which means the elections will go on. Even if it's among the ruins, even if it's amid aftershocks.
Guys, here we are sitting again. This is just terrible. Who knows, damn it, how this will all end. We barely made it in time.
Governor Vladimir Solodkov, as if nothing happened, is running for re-election from United Russia. He has the Kremlin's support, the campaign is underway. An earthquake? Well, it happens. The main thing is for the people to support us, and we'll put in the stumps where needed.
We live in a seismically active area, so we absolutely have to be fully prepared for any potential events.
And for events like this, and now let's listen to what the president said. Yes, that very same president, dictator Vladimir Putin, regarding the largest earthquake in decades. And what did he say?
Back in the day, many years ago, we worked on reinforcing buildings and structures in Kamchatka, specifically because it's a dangerous seismic zone. We worked there on communication systems.
And that's it. No condolences, no emergency meetings, no visit to the affected region. He just gave a formal report, as if it wasn't an emergency at all.
Wow, unbelievable. Where are these people from? All 10 of them?
That's just insane. An earthquake.
Look at the people. How are you, girls? Is everything okay?
Of course, the latest theories aren't coming from the president. Here comes Oleg Tsaryov, a former Rada deputy, now a man who sees the hand of the West in everything. Tsaryov claims that the earthquakes and the volcanic eruption are, quote, a special operation by the US and Ukraine.
It's even suggested that the volcanic eruption in Kamchatka is the result of strikes by Ukrainian drones. I listened to an interview with the Ukrainian intelligence chief Budanov and concluded what's happening in Kamchatka, the earthquakes and the volcanic eruption, is a special operation by the US and Ukraine.
So Ukraine has already moved to a new level and is now controlling Kamchatka's geological processes with the help of Budanov, Biden, and apparently magic.
Today's earthquake has become a serious test for all of us. We experienced the strongest tremors in decades. Right now, seismology experts are compiling their assessments. The preliminary estimate puts the magnitude of the tremors between 7.7 and 7.9.
Meanwhile, in Kamchatka, people are already counting their losses. Some are sleeping in their cars, others are afraid to go back home. The tourist season is ruined, but the governor's campaign is in full swing. The candidate is smiling, campaign stands are up, and canvassers are out and about. The ground is shaking? No big deal. The main thing is stability and the people's love, or at least the imitation of it.
It really is a beautiful place. I recommend it to everyone. If you haven't been, you absolutely must go. It is impressive.
The stumps where the voting will take place, you understand it's not about the place, it's about the attitude. You can put a ballot on a stump and pretend the choice has been made. You can stay silent about the disaster and pretend nothing happened. But Kamchatka, it will survive. It's just that now the political reality resembles an ash cloud. Don't forget, things can still shake beneath your feet.
In Moldova, as part of an investigation into illegal financing and voter bribery, large-scale searches are being conducted.
As noted by Moldovan law enforcement, officers from the National Investigation Inspectorate, the Fulger Police Brigade, and prosecutors from the Prosecutor's Office for Combating Organized Crime and Special Cases are conducting 78 searches in several localities across the country.
The police also promised to provide more detailed information later. On this occasion, I would like to remind you that just a few days ago, a scheme for bribing voters from Russia through an app was uncovered in Moldova.
Law enforcement warned the country's population that a new scheme of illegal financing and voter bribery has appeared in Moldova, which is being operated from Russia through the Taitu app, which runs on the Telegram platform. The General Inspectorate of Police urged citizens not to access this app and not to leave their personal data.
Meanwhile, Moldovan President Maia Sandu stated that Russia is preparing an unprecedented interference in the parliamentary elections in Moldova, which are scheduled for September 28th of this year. What do you think? Will Moldova be able to hold parliamentary elections without Kremlin interference? Or is that, as they say, pure science fiction? Give this video a like to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you soon!